He wasn't supposed to feel anything, but the dog felt it first. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Somewhere warm, or somewhere quiet like this room? Now back to the story. The air inside the Bennett home smells faintly of eucalyptus and clean linen, the kind of scent that tries too hard to feel hopeful. Outside, the late afternoon sun hangs low over the gum trees, casting long golden shadows across a yard that hasn't been played in for months. Inside, everything is still. Too still. Noah Bennett sits in his wheelchair near the window, small hands resting motionless on his lap, eyes open but distant, like he's watching a world that no longer speaks his language. 10 years old. That's all. And already, the silence has learned his name. His mother moves quietly in the kitchen, careful with every step, as if sound itself might break something fragile that hasn't fully shattered yet. Doctors have said their piece. Words like unlikely, permanent, adjustment. Words that land heavy, then linger. But Noah doesn't react to them anymore. He doesn't react to much at all. Not to the breeze brushing through the half-open window. Not to the faint hum of a passing Udo on the road. Not even to the soft voice that still calls him love from across the room. Somewhere far from here, another man wakes with a breath that doesn't belong to the present. Ethan Walker sits upright in a narrow bed, chest rising sharply, eyes scanning shadows that aren't there. The room is dim, the air cool, and beside him, a German shepherd lifts his head before any sound is made. Rex, ears alert, eyes steady. He doesn't bark. He doesn't move much. He just watches. Because he knows. He always knows. Ethan runs a hand down his face, exhaling slowly, the tension leaving in pieces rather than all at once. The faint outline of a tattoo catches the low light, ink shaped like a dog, worn into his right forearm like a promise that never needed words. Easy, mate, he murmurs, though it's unclear who he's speaking to. Rex shifts closer, pressing warmth into the space between silence and breath. Some bonds aren't trained. They're remembered. 2 days later, the sky over Adelaide is wide and pale, stretched thin with heat, as Ethan steps out of an old Hilux, boots meeting gravel with a sound that feels louder than it should. Rex jumps down beside him, landing lightly, scanning the quiet street like it holds more than it shows. The Bennett house stands modest and still, its paint slightly faded, its windows reflecting a world that hasn't entered in a long time. Ethan pauses at the gate. Not hesitation, just awareness. The kind that settles in your chest when you know something inside that house is waiting, even if it doesn't know how to ask. When the door opens, Noah's mother offers a tired smile, one that has learned how to exist without expectation. You must be Ethan, she says softly. He nods. And this is Rex. The dog steps forward without command, without ceremony. No rush. No excitement. Just purpose. Inside, the house greets them with quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The other kind. The kind that fills spaces where laughter used to sit. Rex walks past the couch, past the kitchen doorway, past the small things that usually catch a dog's attention. He doesn't stop until he reaches Noah. And then he sits. No bark. No wag. Just stillness. His eyes lock onto the boys. Something passes between them. Not visible. Not measurable. But real. Noah doesn't turn. Not at first. His gaze remains fixed on the light slipping through the window, dust particles drifting like tiny worlds in slow motion. But Rex doesn't look away. Second stretch. Then something changes. It's small. So small most people would miss it. A flicker in Noah's eyes. A shift so slight it could be mistaken for nothing. But Rex notices. His ears tilt forward. His breath softens. And slowly, gently, Noah's fingers move. Not fully. Not enough to call it a movement. But enough. Just enough to disturb the silence that had claimed him. Ethan sees it. Doesn't speak. Doesn't rush. He just watches, the weight in his chest easing by a fraction. Because sometimes miracles don't arrive like storms. Sometimes they begin with something quieter. A look. A breath. A dog who refuses to look away. The room does not change all at once. It shifts the way dusk creeps across a paddock, slow and almost apologetic, as if asking permission to stay, and Rex feels it before anyone else does. The faint tremor in Noah's fingers like a ripple beneath still water, too small for the eye, but loud to a creature that listens with more than ears, and he leans forward just slightly, his nose hovering near the boy's hand, not touching, Not yet, just waiting, because some moments break if you rush them, and Ethan stands a few steps back, boots planted on the worn timber floor, arms loose at his sides, watching with the kind of stillness that only comes from years of learning when not to interfere, while Noah's mother presses her hand gently against the kitchen bench, her breath caught somewhere between hope and fear, unsure which one will hurt more if she lets it out. And the afternoon light shifts again, warmer now, brushing across Noah's face, catching the faint sheen in his eyes, and then it happens again, the smallest movement. A curl of one finger, barely a centimeter, but enough to disturb the quiet that has wrapped around this house for months. And Rex exhales softly, a low, steady sound, almost like a whisper carried on fur. And this time, he moves closer, lowering his head until it rests lightly against Noah's hand, the contact gentle, deliberate, like placing a stone into calm water and waiting for the rings to form. And Noah blinks, once, slowly, his gaze shifting, not to the window, not to the drifting light, but down, toward the warmth that has chosen him. And something inside his chest responds, not with words, not with thought, but with recognition, the kind that does not ask permission, the kind that simply is. And Ethan notices the change in Rex first, the subtle tightening of posture, the quiet focus, the way the dog's entire body aligns with the boy as if tuned to the same frequency. And he knows that look. He has seen it before in places far from here, places where silence meant something was about to happen, and he steps closer, just one pace, careful not to break whatever fragile thread has begun to form. And Noah's lips part slightly, no sound comes, but the effort is there, visible in the tension of his jaw, in the faint rise of his chest, and his mother lets out a breath she did not realize she had been holding, a soft, shaky exhale that carries months of waiting inside it. And she whispers his name, Noah, barely above the hum of the fridge, but the boy does not look at her, not yet, his attention fixed on the dog, on the steady presence that has not asked him to be anything other than what he is in this moment. And Rex shifts again, pressing just a little more firmly, offering weight, offering warmth, offering something that does not require explanation. And Noah's fingers respond, slowly, unevenly, but undeniably, curling into the fur, gripping, not strongly, not fully, but enough to anchor the moment in something real. And Ethan feels something loosen in his chest, something he has carried without naming. And he glances down at the tattoo on his right forearm, the outline of a dog etched into skin that has seen sun and time. And for a brief second, it feels less like ink and more like memory, like a promise that has traveled further than he ever expected. And outside, a magpie calls from the fence line, the sound sharp and familiar, grounding the world in something ordinary. And inside, the extraordinary continues quietly, without announcement, without spectacle, just a boy and a dog learning the shape of each other's presence. And minutes pass, or maybe longer. Time has a way of losing its edges in moments like this. And Noah's breathing begins to change, deeper now, more deliberate, as if his body is remembering a rhythm it had forgotten. And Rex stays exactly where he is, unmoving except for the slow rise and fall of his chest, a constant, a steady beat against the uncertainty. And Ethan finally speaks, his voice low, careful. That is it. Mate, take your time. Not a command, not even encouragement, just an acknowledgement. And Noah's eyes flicker again, this time lifting slightly, meeting Rex's gaze for the first time. And there is something there, something that was not present before. Not quite a smile, not yet, but the absence of emptiness. And his mother steps closer, one hand hovering near his shoulder, afraid to touch, afraid to break the fragile thread that has begun to weave itself between her son and this animal who walked in without permission and somehow knew exactly where to go. And the house feels different now, not louder, not brighter, but less heavy, as if the air itself has shifted to make room for something new. And Rex blinks slowly, holding the boy's gaze, patient, unwavering. And in that silent exchange, something unspoken settles, not a miracle in the way people expect, not sudden or grand, but something quieter, something that grows in the spaces between breaths. And Ethan watches it unfold, understanding without needing to explain, because some things are not meant to be explained, they are meant to be witnessed. And as the sun dips lower outside, painting the room in deeper gold. Noah's hand remains in Rex's fur, holding on, not just to the dog, but to something that feels, for the first time in a long while, like it might lead somewhere beyond the stillness. The evening settles in slowly, stretching shadows across the walls as the last of the sunlight fades beyond the gum trees. And with it comes a quiet that feels different now, not empty, not heavy, but waiting, like the pause between two breaths that have not yet learned to trust each other again. And Noah sits where he was left, his hands still tangled in Rex's fur, fingers curled with a fragile determination that does not quite understand itself. And Rex does not move, not even when a faint breeze slips through the window and stirs the curtain beside them, because he knows this is not the moment to chase movement. This is the moment to become still enough for something else to rise. And across the room, Ethan leans lightly against the wall, arms folded now, his gaze fixed not on the boy, but on the connection itself, the invisible thread that has begun to tighten between two beings who have not yet spoken a single word to each other. And Noah's mother sits quietly at the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, her knuckles pale, her eyes moving between them as if afraid that looking away might cause the moment to disappear. And time stretches again, long enough for the house to settle, for the soft ticking of the clock to find its rhythm, for the distant sound of a train passing somewhere far off to remind them that the world is still moving even if this room feels suspended in something else entirely. And then Noah shifts, not much, just a slight tilt of his head, but enough for Rex to notice instantly, his ears lifting a fraction, his gaze sharpening, and he lets out a soft exhale, warm and steady against the boy's hand. And Noah responds again, his fingers tightening just a little more. A reflex perhaps, or maybe something deeper, something waking slowly beneath the surface. And Ethan pushes himself off the wall, taking a step closer, careful, measured, as if walking across ground that might give way if he moves too quickly, and he crouches down beside them, his presence low and calm, his voice softer than before. "You are doing well, mate," he says, not expecting an answer, not needing one. And Noah's eyes flicker toward him for the briefest second before returning to Rex, as if the dog is the only language he remembers how to understand. And outside, the temperature drops slightly, the evening air carrying a faint chill that slips through the open window and brushes against Noah's skin, and Rex feels it before the others do, shifting just enough to press closer, offering warmth without being asked. And that small act, that simple adjustment, draws another response, Noah's wrist turning slightly, not fully controlled, not smooth, but deliberate enough to be seen. And his mother gasps quietly, her hand flying to her mouth as tears gather in her eyes, not from shock, but from something softer, something that has been waiting for a sign, any sign, that the boy she knows is still there somewhere beneath the silence. And Ethan glances at her briefly, offering a small nod, not reassurance exactly, but acknowledgement, because he knows better than to name something too early, knows that progress like this is fragile, that it needs space more than celebration. And Rex remains steady, his breathing slow, his body relaxed but attentive, a quiet anchor in a room that is beginning to feel less like a place of waiting and more like a place of becoming. And minutes pass, the kind that feel longer than they are, and Noah's hand shifts. Again, this time not just a curl, but a slight lift, a fraction of a centimeter, barely noticeable unless you are watching closely, unless you are Rex, who tilts his head just enough to meet the movement, to encourage it without forcing it. And Ethan feels something stir in his chest, something that reminds him of nights under open skies, of moments when everything depended on reading what could not be spoken. And he looks down at the tattoo on his arm again, tracing the outline with his thumb, absent-mindedly, as if grounding himself in something that has followed him from one life into another. And Noah's breathing deepens further, his chest rising and falling with a rhythm that feels more present, more engaged, and for a brief moment, his lips part again, a soft sound escaping. Not quite a word, not yet, but something closer than silence. And Rex responds immediately, a low hum in his throat, not a bark, not a command, just a sound that exists between them. And Noah's eyes widen, slightly, not in fear, but in recognition, as if that sound has reached a place inside him that words have not been able to touch. And his mother leans forward, unable to hold back now, her voice trembling as she whispers, "Noah, love, can you hear me?" But again, the boy does not look at her, not because he does not know her, but because something else has taken hold, something that feels new and familiar at the same time. And Ethan places a gentle hand on her shoulder, steadying her, grounding her, because this moment does not belong to urgency. It belongs to patience. And as the last light fades completely, leaving the room in a soft, dim glow, Noah's hand remains lifted just slightly above Rex's fur, held there by something that is still finding its way back, and Rex stays with him, unwavering, his presence constant, as if he has nowhere else to be, and in that quiet, in that fragile, unfolding space, something continues to grow, not loudly, not quickly, but undeniably, like the first roots of something that has decided, against all expectation, to live. The night settles deeper, wrapping the house in a quiet that no longer feels empty but attentive, as if even the walls have begun to listen, and a soft lamp glows in the corner, casting warm light over Noah's still figure and the steady presence beside him. Rex unmoving except for the slow rhythm of his breathing, and Ethan remains close, seated now on a low chair, elbows resting on his knees, watching not for change, but for truth, because truth moves slower than hope, and it is the only thing that lasts. And Noah's hand trembles again, a faint, unsteady motion, like a signal trying to find its way through fog, and this time it does not fall back completely. It hovers, suspended between what was and what might be, and Rex shifts his head slightly beneath it, offering support without pressure, a silent understanding that does not demand, and Noah's fingers respond, brushing against the coarse warmth of fur, not gripping now, but exploring, as if rediscovering the meaning of touch itself, and a faint sound escapes him again, softer than before, shaped more like breath than voice, but it carries something new, something that does not belong to silence anymore. And his mother leans forward instinctively, tears tracing quiet lines down her cheeks. But she does not speak this time. She has learned, even in these few moments, that words can wait, that some things grow better in stillness. And outside, the wind picks up gently, rustling through the leaves, a dry whisper that brushes against the window. And for the first time, Noah's eyes shift toward the sound. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to suggest awareness. Enough to suggest that the world beyond his stillness is beginning to reach him again. And Rex notices, of course he does, his ears flicking toward the window before returning to Noah, always returning, because that is where he has chosen to be. And Ethan exhales slowly, a breath he did not realize he had been holding, and he leans forward just slightly, his voice calm and low. "You are doing well, mate. Just stay with him." Though he is speaking more to the moment than to the boy, and Noah's fingers tighten again, this time more certain, curling into the fur with a strength that was not there before, and his wrist lifts a fraction higher, no more than a centimeter, but enough to change the shape of everything in the room. And his mother lets out a quiet sob, quickly covered by her hand, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of something breaking open inside her, something she had tried to protect by not hoping too much. And Ethan glances at her again, offering a small, steady look that says nothing and everything at once, because he knows that what is happening here cannot be rushed, cannot be claimed too quickly. It must be allowed to unfold, one breath at a time. And Rex remains the anchor, his body warm and solid, his presence unwavering. And as Noah's hand steadies, his breathing deepens further, drawing in the cool night air that slips through the open window, carrying with it the scent of earth and eucalyptus, grounding, familiar, alive. And something shifts again, deeper this time, not just in his hand, but in his posture, a slight straightening of his back, barely visible but unmistakable, as if his body is remembering alignment, remembering how to hold itself against gravity. And Ethan notices immediately, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in doubt, but in focus, and he adjusts his position, ready but not interfering. And Noah's lips part once more, the effort clearer now, the shape of a word almost forming, and though no sound comes that can be understood, the intention is there, present, undeniable, and Rex responds with a soft, low hum, a sound that seems to meet the boy halfway, bridging the gap between what cannot yet be said and what is already understood, and Noah's eyes flicker again, this time lifting higher, meeting Rex's gaze fully, and something settles there, something that feels like recognition, not of the dog alone, but of himself within the connection, and his hand moves again, not just a lift now, but a slight forward motion, reaching, as if drawn by something that does not need explanation, and Rex adjusts instantly, stepping closer, aligning his body with the movement, offering balance without force, and Ethan feels it then, the shift from stillness into something else, something that carries weight, and he places one hand lightly on the arm of the wheelchair, not to move it, but to steady the space around it, to hold the moment in place, and Noah's shoulders tense slightly, a sign of effort, of engagement, and for a second, it looks like too much, like the fragile thread might snap under the strain, but Rex stays, pressing gently into him, grounding him, reminding him without words that he is not alone in this, and the tension eases just enough for the movement to continue, and Noah's hand lowers again. But not all the way, it pauses midway, suspended, as if deciding, as if choosing, and his mother watches with wide, tear-filled eyes, her heart caught between fear and something brighter, something she has not allowed herself to feel in a long time. And Ethan remains steady, his presence quiet but firm, and in that small, dimly lit room, something shifts again, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet certainty of something taking root, and as the night deepens and the sounds outside soften into distant echoes, Noah's hand finally settles back into Rex's fur, not from weakness, but from completion, from the end of a small, significant effort, and Rex lowers his head once more, resting it gently beneath the boy's hand, holding the connection in place. And for the first time since the silence began, the room does not feel like a place where something is missing. It feels like a place where something has begun. Morning does not arrive all at once. It seeps in through the edges of the curtains, pale gold light stretching across the timber floor, touching the wheels of the chair, the worn rug, the quiet shape of a boy who did not move much the night before yet somehow changed everything. And Rex is already awake, though it is hard to tell because he never truly sleeps the way other dogs do, his eyes half open, his breathing slow, his body still positioned beside Noah, as if the night never asked him to leave. And when the first bird calls echo outside, sharp and clear in the cool Australian air, his ears twitch slightly, not in distraction but in awareness, always aware, always present, and Noah stirs, not with a sudden motion, not with the kind of waking that belongs to ordinary mornings, but with a subtle shift, a deeper breath, a slight tension in his fingers where they rest against fur, and that is enough for Rex to lift his head and watch, not expectant, not impatient, just ready. And across the room, Ethan stands near the window, one hand resting against the frame, looking out at the quiet street where the world continues without knowing what has begun inside this house. And he glances back over his shoulder, eyes settling on the boy and the dog, measuring nothing, forcing nothing, just witnessing, because some progress is not meant to be guided. It is meant to be allowed. And Noah's mother moves softly in the kitchen again, the gentle clink of a cup, the faint hum of the kettle, ordinary sounds that feel different now, lighter somehow, as if they carry less weight than they did the day before. And when she steps into the doorway, she pauses, taking in the sight of her son not as he was, but as he is becoming, and she presses her hand lightly against her chest, grounding herself in the moment, because hope, when it returns, can feel just as overwhelming as loss. And Noah's eyes open slowly, blinking against the morning light, and for a brief second, there is confusion there, the kind that comes from crossing between sleep and waking. But then his gaze shifts downward, finding Rex exactly where he was left, and something settles in his expression, something softer, something steadier, and his fingers move again, this time more deliberate, a small curl, a slight press into the dog's fur, and Rex responds instantly, lifting his head just enough to meet the touch, offering that same quiet presence, that same unspoken assurance. And Noah's wrist follows, lifting a little higher than the night before, not much, maybe a centimeter or two, but enough to show intention, enough to show that this is no longer just a reflex. And Ethan steps closer, slow and measured, crouching down to bring himself level with them, his voice calm, almost a whisper. Good on you. Mate, that is it. And Noah's eyes flicker toward him briefly, holding there for a fraction longer than before, as if the connection is widening, as if the world is beginning to include more than just the dog. And then his attention returns to Rex, because that is where it began, and Rex shifts slightly, rising to his feet in a smooth, controlled motion, not pulling away, but inviting something new. And for a moment, nothing happens, the space between them stretching, uncertain, and then Noah's hand lifts again, higher this time, reaching forward, following the movement, and his shoulder tenses, his body engaging in ways it has not for a long time. And it is not easy. It shows in the slight tremble, in the uneven breath, in the way his head tilts as if trying to align with something his body has forgotten. But Rex stays close, stepping just enough to keep the distance within reach, never too far, never too close, always exactly where he needs to be. And Noah leans forward, just a fraction, barely visible unless you are watching closely, and his mother gasps softly from the doorway, her hand gripping the frame, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder, and Ethan places a steadying hand on the back of the chair, not to hold it still, but to hold the moment steady, to anchor it in something real. And Noah's hand reaches Rex again, fingers brushing against his shoulder this time instead of his head, a new point of contact, a new connection, and Rex turns his head slightly, meeting the touch, his eyes calm, unwavering, and Noah's lips part, a breath slipping out that carries the faintest shape of a sound, not clear, not formed, but closer than before. And Ethan hears it, his gaze sharpening, but he does not interrupt, he does not ask, he simply stays, because this is not a moment for questions, it is a moment for presence. And Noah's body shifts again, a subtle forward motion, his back straightening just a little more, his balance adjusting, and for a second, it looks as though he might tip, as though the effort might be too much, but Rex steps in, pressing lightly against his knees, offering support, not force, just enough to remind him where he is. And Noah steadies, his breathing deepening, his focus narrowing, and something changes again, something quiet but undeniable, the kind of change that does not announce itself but makes everything feel different. And his hand lifts once more, this time not just reaching, but holding itself there, suspended in air, unsupported, a small, trembling victory that hangs between effort and belief. And his mother cannot hold back the tears now. They fall freely, silently, as she watches her son do something the world had told her would not happen, not like this, not without struggle, not without time. And yet here it is, not perfect, not complete, but real. And Ethan looks down briefly at the tattoo on his arm, the outline of a dog etched into his skin, and for a moment, it feels like more than memory. It feels like a bridge, something that has carried meaning from one life into another. And when he looks back up, Noah's hand is still there, still lifted, still reaching, and Rex stands beside him, steady as ever. And in that quiet morning light, something becomes clear, not in words, not in certainty, but in presence, that this is no longer just about movement. It is about trust, about connection, about a boy learning how to return to himself one breath at a time, guided not by commands, but by something far simpler and far stronger, the quiet, unwavering loyalty of a dog who chose to stay. The day stretches forward in quiet increments, the kind that do not announce themselves but gather weight with every small movement, every breath that carries a little more intention than the one before. And Noah remains at the center of it, his body still learning the language it once spoke without thought, his hand trembling in the space between effort and memory. And Rex stands beside him, unwavering, a steady presence that does not push, does not command, only exists in a way that invites something deeper to surface. And Ethan watches from just within reach, his posture relaxed but attentive, like a man who understands that the most important moments often arrive without warning and disappear just as easily if mishandled. And Noah's arm lowers slightly from the strain, his fingers brushing against Rex's shoulder again, seeking contact as if it anchors him to something real. And Rex leans into it just enough, offering resistance, something for the boy to feel, something to hold against. And Noah responds, his grip tightening, not strong, not steady, but present, undeniably present. And his breathing shifts again, deeper now, more controlled, as if each inhale carries a quiet decision to stay, to try, to reach just a little further than before, and his mother stands close, no longer in the doorway, but near enough to feel the change in the air, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes moving between them, afraid and hopeful in equal measure. And Ethan steps in closer, his voice low, calm. Let him find it, do not rush him. And she nods, though her breath catches again, because watching something return is not always gentle. It pulls at every part of you that has learned to protect itself from disappointment, and Noah shifts forward again, a fraction more than before, his shoulders engaging, his torso leaning just enough to change the balance of his body, and for a moment, it wavers, uncertain, and Rex moves instantly, stepping closer, his body aligning with Noah's legs, offering a point of contact. A silent brace that does not trap but supports, and Noah steadies, his hand pressing more firmly into the dog's fur, using it, not consciously, but instinctively, as a guide. And something clicks, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet certainty of recognition, and his other hand twitches, the one that has remained still for so long it almost seemed forgotten, and Ethan sees it, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in doubt, but in focus, and he shifts his weight, ready but not intervening, and Noah's fingers on that second hand move again, a faint curl, a subtle response, and his mother lets out a small sound, half breath, half disbelief, but she does not step forward, she holds herself back, because she understands now that this space belongs to something larger than her fear, and Rex remains steady, his presence constant, his attention fixed entirely on the boy, and Noah leans again. Further this time, his body responding in uneven, uncertain increments, and his feet, resting on the footplate, pressed slightly, not lifting, not yet, but engaging, a signal that travels upward, through muscles that have been silent for too long, and his posture shifts again, straighter now, more aligned, and for a second, the room seems to hold its breath, and then it happens, small, almost invisible, but real, his weight shifts off the back of the chair, just enough to break the pattern that has held him in place, and Rex adjusts immediately, stepping forward a fraction, creating space, inviting movement, and Noah follows, his hand sliding along the dog's shoulder, his body leaning into the space that is opened, and his legs respond, not fully, not strongly, but enough to carry a hint of pressure, enough to suggest that they remember something, something buried but not lost, and Ethan places a firm but gentle hand near Noah's side, not lifting him, not holding him up, just there, a safeguard, a quiet presence that says you can try, and Noah's breath quickens slightly, not from fear, but from effort, from the unfamiliar sensation of his body doing something it has not done in so long. And Rex remains in front of him now, close enough to touch, far enough to move, his eyes steady, his posture calm, and Noah's gaze locks onto him. That same focus, that same connection that began in stillness now guiding him through motion, and his knees tremble, his balance falters for a brief second, and his mother gasps softly, but Ethan's voice comes low and steady. Stay with him. Mate, you have got this. And Rex steps closer again, pressing lightly against Noah's legs, grounding him, and the tremble eases, just enough, and Noah pushes again, a small, determined effort, his body rising a fraction more, not fully standing, not yet, but lifting, just enough to change everything. And in that moment, the chair is no longer the only place he exists, and his mother's tears fall freely now, silent, overwhelming, and Ethan feels the weight of it too, the quiet gravity of a moment that does not need words, and Rex holds his position, steady, patient, as if he has been waiting for this exact point all along, and Noah's body lowers again, gently, back into the chair, the effort spent, the energy fading, but something remains, something new, something that cannot be undone, and his hand stays on Rex, not gripping tightly now, but resting, connected, and his breathing slows, settling into a rhythm that feels different, stronger somehow, and the room exhales with him, the tension easing, the quiet returning, but not the same quiet as before. This one carries something else, something alive, something that has begun to grow, and Ethan steps back slightly, giving space, his gaze moving between the boy and the dog, understanding without needing to speak it, And as the day continues to unfold outside, ordinary and unchanged, inside this small house, something extraordinary has taken its first real step, not in distance, but in possibility. The afternoon drifts into a softer light, the kind that stretches long across the floor and settles gently on everything it touches, and the house carries a new kind of quiet now, not the heavy silence of waiting, but the careful stillness of something being rebuilt piece by piece. And Noah sits where he was left after the effort, his body resting but not retreating, his hand still on Rex, fingers relaxed yet unwilling to let go completely, as if somewhere inside he understands that this connection is more than comfort, it is direction, and Rex remains beside him, lying now with his head close to Noah's knee, eyes half open, watching without staring, listening without needing sound, and Ethan moves quietly through the space, adjusting small things, shifting a chair slightly, opening the window a little wider to let in the afternoon breeze, actions that seem ordinary but carry intention, because the environment matters, the air matters, the space around a moment can either support it or suffocate it. And Noah's mother sits nearby, closer than before, her posture no longer rigid with fear, but softened by something fragile and growing. And she watches her son not as someone broken, but as someone in the middle of returning, and Noah's breathing steadies, deep and even, his chest rising with a rhythm that feels more grounded, more connected to the world around him, and his fingers twitch again, a small movement, but deliberate, and Rex responds instantly, lifting his head slightly, meeting the motion with quiet attention, and Noah's hand shifts, sliding along the dog's fur, exploring, testing, learning the texture again as if it holds answers his mind cannot yet form. And Ethan notices the change, the subtle shift from effort to curiosity, and he steps closer, his voice calm and low. "That is good, mate, just follow him." And Noah's eyes flicker upward, not fully meeting Ethan's gaze, but acknowledging it, a brief connection that did not exist before, and then they return to Rex, because that is where the path feels clear, and Rex rises slowly, carefully, making sure the movement is seen, not sudden, not startling, just enough to invite something, and Noah responds, his hand lifting again, following, and this time his arm comes with it, not smoothly, not strongly, but moving, undeniably moving, and his shoulder engages, his body leaning forward just a little more than before, and the chair creaks softly beneath him, a quiet reminder of what has been and what might change, and his mother inhales sharply, her hand tightening around the edge of the couch, but she does not move. She has learned now that stillness is part of this, that her role is not to rush in but to hold space, and Ethan stays close, one hand hovering near Noah's side, not touching, just there, a safety net that does not interfere, and Noah's arm extends further, his fingers brushing against Rex's back again, and this time he holds it there, not falling away, not losing contact, but maintaining it, sustaining the effort, and something shifts in his posture, his back straightening more, his core engaging, small adjustments that build on each other, and Rex steps forward again, a slow, measured step, creating space, and Noah follows, leaning, his body responding in increments that feel both fragile and powerful, and his feet press more firmly now, the muscles in his legs waking in uneven patterns, and for a moment, everything pauses, the room holding its breath, the air thick with the weight of what could happen next. And Noah pushes, a small, determined effort, his body lifting slightly from the chair, not fully, not yet, but enough to break the boundary that held him there. And Rex moves closer instantly, his body aligning with Noah's knees, offering support, and Noah steadies, his hand gripping the fur more firmly, and his breath quickens, the effort visible now. But so is the focus, the intent, the refusal to let go, and Ethan's voice comes again, steady, grounding. "That is it, stay with him." And Noah does, his eyes fixed on Rex, his body following the connection rather than fighting it, and his legs push again, a fraction more, his weight shifting upward, and for a brief second, he is suspended between sitting and standing, between what was and what is becoming, and his mother cannot hold back the sound that escapes her, a soft, broken whisper of his name, filled with everything she has carried and everything she is beginning to release. And Noah wavers, the effort pulling at him, his balance uncertain, and Rex presses gently against him, grounding him, holding him in that space without force, and Ethan places his hand lightly at Noah's side, steadying without lifting, allowing the boy to feel the effort as his own, and then slowly, carefully, Noah lowers himself back into the chair, the energy spent, his body trembling slightly from the exertion, but his hand remains on Rex, still connected, still present, and his breathing begins to slow again, settling into a rhythm that feels deeper, stronger, and the room exhales with him, the tension easing into something quieter, something steadier, and Ethan steps back, giving space, his eyes moving between the boy and the dog, understanding what has just happened without needing to name it, and Rex lies down again, close, constant, his presence unchanged, as if nothing extraordinary has occurred, as if this is simply what he was meant to do, and Noah's fingers relax slightly, resting in the fur, not gripping now, but holding on in a different way, and his eyes remain open, focused, aware, and as the afternoon light begins to fade, casting longer shadows across the room, something settles into place, not an ending, not even a breakthrough in the way people expect, but a quiet certainty that this path, however slow, however uncertain, is real, and that each small movement carries with it the weight of something far greater than distance, something that cannot be measured in steps or time, but only in trust. The late afternoon gives way to evening again, slower this time, as if the day itself is reluctant to leave what it has witnessed behind, and the sky outside softens into pale orange and fading blue, the kind of light that does not demand attention but settles quietly into everything it touches, and inside the house, the air feels different, not just lighter, but steadier, like something fragile has found its footing and is learning how to stand without being held, and Noah remains in his chair, his body tired now, the effort of the day lingering in the subtle tremor of his arms, in the quiet rise and fall of his chest, but his eyes are open, alert, present in a way that was not there before, and Rex stays beside him, not as a guard, not as a guide, but as something simpler and more powerful, a constant, and Ethan sits nearby, leaning back slightly, his posture relaxed but his attention never far, because he knows that progress does not follow a straight line, it moves forward and back. It tests and retreats, and what matters is not the size of the step, but the willingness to take another, and Noah's fingers move again, slower now, heavier with fatigue, but still deliberate, still searching, and they find Rex's fur without hesitation, as if that path has already been carved into him, and Rex responds with a small shift, a slight lean into the touch, acknowledging it without making it larger than it is, and Noah's breathing steadies again, deeper, calmer, as if the contact brings him back to something centered, something real, and his mother watches from her place on the couch, her eyes no longer wide with fear, but soft with something quieter, something that feels like trust, though she is still learning how to hold it, and she wipes at her cheeks, not to hide the tears, but to clear the space so she can see him more clearly, and Ethan glances toward her briefly, offering a small nod, a silent understanding that this is not over, not even close, but it has begun, and that matters more than anything else. And outside, the first evening sounds begin to settle in, the distant hum of traffic, the call of birds returning to their trees, the soft rustle of leaves as the air cools, and inside, Noah shifts again, not with the urgency of before, but with a quieter intention, his hand lifting slightly from Rex, hovering for a moment as if testing whether it can exist without the contact, and for a second, it holds, suspended, unsupported, and Ethan notices immediately, his gaze sharpening, but he does not move, he does not speak, because this moment belongs to Noah alone, and Rex remains still, not stepping in, not closing the distance, allowing the boy to feel the space, to understand it, and Noah's hand trembles, the effort visible, the uncertainty present, and then slowly, carefully, it lowers again, finding Rex once more, not as a retreat, but as a choice, a decision to reconnect, to ground himself again before trying something new. And that choice carries weight, quiet and profound, and Ethan exhales softly, the tension in his chest easing just a fraction, and Noah's eyes shift again, this time not just between Rex and the floor, but toward the room itself, toward his mother, and for a brief moment, their gazes meet. Not fully, not steadily, but enough to bridge a distance that has felt impossible, and she inhales sharply, her hand rising instinctively toward him. But she stops herself, holding back, because she knows now that this is not something to grasp, it is something to receive, and Noah's lips part again, a faint sound forming, not clear, not shaped into words, but closer than silence, and his mother's breath catches, her eyes filling once more, but she does not speak. She lets the moment exist without adding to it, and Rex shifts slightly, his head tilting, his eyes fixed on Noah with that same steady focus, and Noah responds, his hand pressing into the fur again, more firmly this time, as if drawing strength from it, and his shoulders engage once more, a subtle tightening, a preparation, and Ethan leans forward just a fraction, his voice low and calm. Only if you want to, mate, not a command, not an expectation, just an opening. And Noah leans forward again, slower now, more controlled, his body remembering the movement from earlier, his feet pressing lightly against the footplate, and his balance shifts, not as sharply, not as uncertainly, but with a hint of familiarity, and Rex stands again, smooth and quiet, stepping forward just enough to create space, and Noah follows, his hand sliding along the dog's back, his body leaning into the movement, and for a moment, it feels like the same as before, the same fragile effort, the same trembling uncertainty, but there is something different now, something steadier beneath it, and his legs engage again, the muscles responding in uneven but present patterns, and his weight lifts slightly from the chair, not as high, not as long, but with more control, more awareness, and Ethan places his hand near Noah's side again, not touching, just there, a quiet safety. And Noah holds the position for a brief second, suspended between sitting and standing, and then lowers himself back down, gently, deliberately, and his breathing steadies once more, not rushed, not strained, but measured, and Rex returns to his side, lying down. Again, as if nothing has changed, as if this is simply the rhythm they are learning together, and Noah's hand rests on him again, not gripping tightly, not reaching, just there, connected, and his eyes remain open, aware, moving slowly between Rex, his mother, and the room itself. And as the light fades completely, leaving the house in the soft glow of evening, something settles into place, not a conclusion, not even a breakthrough in the way people might expect, but a quiet, undeniable truth, that the boy who once sat in silence is no longer alone inside it, and that every small movement, every breath, every touch, is building something that cannot be rushed, but cannot be stopped either. The night deepens, not with darkness alone, but with a quiet that feels settled, earned, like the house itself has learned to breathe differently, and the small lamp in the corner casts a soft amber glow across the room, catching on the edges of Noah's chair, the curve of Rex's back, the still figure of Ethan seated nearby, and everything feels slower now, not in a way that stalls, but in a way that allows each moment to fully arrive before the next begins, and Noah remains where he is, his hand resting against Rex, fingers lightly tangled in fur, not gripping, not searching, just present, and his breathing is steady, deeper than it has been in a long time, each inhale carrying something new, something that feels closer to intention than instinct, and Rex lies beside him, his body relaxed but attentive, the rise and fall of his chest matching the rhythm of the boy's breath, as if the two have found a shared pace that neither of them questions. And Ethan watches quietly, his gaze soft but focused, understanding that this is not a moment for action, but for witnessing, because sometimes the most important changes happen in stillness, in the spaces where nothing appears to be happening at all, and Noah's eyes shift again, slowly, taking in the room with a kind of awareness that feels tentative but real, and they settle briefly on his mother, who sits across from him, hands folded in her lap, her posture no longer tight with fear but open, patient, her eyes meeting his without pressing, without asking, simply receiving, and for a second, the connection holds, fragile but undeniable, and her breath catches, not from surprise, but from the quiet weight of being seen again, and she offers a small smile, gentle, unforced, and Noah's gaze lingers just a moment longer before drifting back to Rex, because that is where the certainty still lives, and Rex shifts slightly, lifting his head. His eyes meeting Noah's with that same steady focus, and Noah responds, his fingers moving again, a slow, deliberate curl, not as uncertain as before, not as hesitant, but still careful, as if each movement is being considered before it is allowed. And Ethan leans forward slightly, his voice low, almost a whisper. You are still here, mate, keep going. Not as a command, but as a reminder, and Noah's hand lifts again, just a fraction, hovering above Rex's fur. And this time it stays there a little longer, not immediately returning, not seeking contact right away, but holding the space, testing it. And Rex does not move, does not close the gap. He waits, allowing the boy to own the moment, and Noah's hand trembles slightly, the effort visible, but it does not fall. It holds, suspended, between what is known and what is possible, and his breathing deepens, a quiet focus settling over him. And then slowly, carefully, his hand moves forward again, not down, but outward, reaching past Rex, into the space beyond. And for a moment, everything seems to pause, the room holding its breath, the air still, and Ethan feels it, that subtle shift, that crossing from repetition into something new, and he does not move, does not speak, because this belongs to Noah, and Noah's arm extends a little further, not fully, not smoothly, but undeniably moving beyond the familiar, and his fingers open slightly, as if searching for something that is not there yet. And Rex watches, his head tilted, his eyes steady, not intervening, just present. And Noah's body leans forward again, a small shift in balance, his feet pressing lightly against the footplate. And for a second, it looks uncertain, like the effort might falter, but he holds it, just long enough to feel it, to understand it. And then his hand lowers again, returning to Rex, not as a retreat, but as a completion, as if he has reached out and now chooses to come back. And his fingers settle into the fur once more, grounding him, and his breathing steadies again, slower now, more controlled, and his mother exhales softly, a quiet release of tension she did not realize she was holding, and she leans back slightly, allowing the moment to settle without trying to shape it. And Ethan shifts his weight, sitting back again, his eyes moving between the boy and the dog, understanding the significance of what has just happened, not because it was large, but because it was new. And Rex lowers his head again, resting it gently near Noah's hand, maintaining the connection without demanding it. And Noah's eyes close briefly, not from exhaustion, but from something softer, something that feels like trust. And when they open again, they are clearer, more focused, and they move once more toward his mother, holding her gaze just a little longer this time. And she smiles again, tears in her eyes, but her voice steady as she whispers, I am right here, love. And this time, Noah does not look away immediately. He stays, just for a moment, present in a way that feels both fragile and strong. And Rex remains beside him, unchanged, constant. And as the night settles fully around them, wrapping the house in a quiet that no longer feels empty, something becomes clear, not in words, not in certainty, but in the steady rhythm of breath and presence, that this journey is no longer about whether he will move, but about how far he is willing to follow the connection that has brought him this far, one small, deliberate moment at a time. The hours slip quietly into the deeper part of night, where sound becomes softer, and even the smallest movement carries weight, and the house settles into a stillness that feels earned, not empty, as if every wall has witnessed enough to understand that something important is unfolding within it. And Noah remains where he is, his body resting but not retreating, his hand still resting lightly against Rex. The connection no longer something he reaches for in uncertainty, but something he holds with quiet familiarity. And his breathing is even now, steady, each inhale and exhale carrying a rhythm that feels anchored, as if his body is learning not just how to move, but how to stay. And Rex lies beside him, head low, eyes half open, always aware, always listening in a way that does not require sound. And Ethan sits nearby, one elbow resting on his knee, his gaze calm but present, understanding that this phase, this quiet after effort, is just as important as the movement itself. Because this is where the body remembers, where it begins to trust what it has just done. And across from them, Noah's mother has not moved much. Her posture softened, her hands now resting loosely in her lap, no longer clenched, her eyes watching her son not with fear, but with a kind of careful belief that is still finding its shape. And for a while, nothing changes, not visibly, not dramatically. Just the slow passage of time marked by the gentle ticking of the clock and the distant hum of night settling over the neighborhood. And then Noah shifts, a small adjustment, almost imperceptible, but enough for Rex to lift his head slightly, his attention sharpening, and Noah's fingers move again. Not searching this time, not tentative, but deliberate, sliding along the fur as if mapping something familiar. And then his hand lifts, just a little, hovering again in that fragile space. But this time it holds more steadily. The tremor still there, but less uncertain, and Ethan notices immediately, his posture leaning forward just a fraction, his voice low, steady. That is it. Mate, take your time. And Noah's eyes remain fixed on Rex. But there is something different now, something more grounded, as if the connection has moved from something external to something internal, and his arm extends slightly, not reaching outward this time, but adjusting within itself, finding balance, and his shoulder engages, a subtle tightening that suggests awareness, control, and his other hand twitches again, more clearly now, fingers curling faintly against his leg, and his mother inhales softly, her eyes widening. But she does not interrupt. She has learned that these moments cannot be rushed. And Rex remains still, allowing the space to exist, allowing Noah to move without being guided. And Noah leans forward again, not as far as before, but with more control, his body responding in a way that feels less like effort and more like intention, and his feet press lightly, the movement small but coordinated, and for a moment, everything aligns, his breath, his posture, the quiet focus in his eyes. And Ethan places his hand lightly near Noah's side again, not touching, just there, a steady presence. And Noah holds the position for a second longer than before, suspended in that delicate balance. And then slowly, carefully, he shifts his weight again, not upward this time, but forward, a controlled movement that suggests understanding rather than trial. And Rex responds by stepping back just a fraction, creating space, allowing the movement to continue, and Noah follows, his hand sliding along the dog's back, maintaining contact while exploring something new, and his breathing deepens, not from strain, but from concentration, and for a brief moment, his lips part again, and this time, the sound that comes is slightly clearer, still not a word, not yet, but shaped, intentional, and his mother covers her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling again, but she remains still, allowing the moment to exist fully, and Ethan's gaze softens, a quiet recognition passing through him, because he understands that this is not just physical, this is something deeper, something reconnecting in ways that cannot be measured. And Noah's body shifts again, his spine straightening just a little more, his shoulders aligning, and for a second, he holds himself there without leaning, without relying completely on the chair. And it is brief, barely a moment, but it is real. And Rex stays close, his presence steady, his body ready but not intervening, and Noah's hand lowers again, returning to rest against the fur. But this time it does not collapse, it settles, controlled, intentional, and his breathing steadies once more, slower now, calmer, and the room exhales with him, the tension easing into something quieter, something more certain, and his eyes lift again, moving across the room, finding his mother. And this time he holds her gaze longer, not drifting away, not retreating, and she smiles through her tears, her voice soft but steady. I see you, Noah. And for a moment, just a moment, it feels like he sees her too, fully, clearly, and then his gaze returns to Rex, because that is still where the path is strongest, and Rex lowers his head again, resting it gently near Noah's hand, maintaining that connection without demand, and Ethan leans back slightly, his posture easing, because he knows that what has happened here is not something that can be forced forward. It must grow at its own pace. And as the night deepens further, wrapping the house in a quiet that feels different now, not empty, not uncertain, but full of something that has begun to take shape, something steady, something real, it becomes clear that this journey is no longer about waiting for change, but about learning how to follow it, one small, deliberate moment at a time. The first light of morning returns with a quiet persistence, slipping through the curtains in soft bands of gold, touching the floor, the chair, the still figure of a boy who is no longer as still as he once was, and the house wakes slowly, not with urgency, but with a kind of cautious hope that lingers in the air like the scent of warm tea and eucalyptus drifting from the open window. And Noah sits where he has come to rest, his body no longer sunk into the chair but held a little higher, a little more aware of itself, and his hand remains on Rex, not out of necessity now, but out of choice, a connection that has become something steady, something known. And Rex lies beside him, calm and present, his breathing slow, his ears attuned to every subtle shift, every small signal that others might miss. And Ethan stands nearby, watching the morning unfold with the same quiet focus he has carried since he arrived, his posture relaxed, but his attention unwavering, because he knows that mornings like this are not just new beginnings. They are tests, quiet invitations to see if what was found in the night can hold in the light. And Noah's fingers move again, a slow, deliberate motion, tracing the line of Rex's fur. Not searching now, not uncertain, but aware, and his wrist lifts slightly, more controlled than before, and for a moment, it holds without trembling, a small victory that does not need to be announced to be real. And Ethan notices, of course he does, his eyes narrowing just slightly, not in doubt, but in recognition, and he steps closer, his voice low, steady. "That is it, mate. You remember now." And Noah's eyes flicker upward, meeting Ethan's gaze for a brief second, longer than before, clearer than before, and then they return to Rex, because that is still where the path feels strongest, and Rex responds by rising slowly, carefully, his movement smooth, deliberate, creating space without breaking the connection, and Noah follows, his hand lifting from the fur, hovering again, but this time it does not rush back. It stays, suspended, steady, and his arm extends slightly, more than it has before, and his shoulder engages, his posture adjusting, aligning in a way that suggests not just effort, but understanding, and his other hand moves again, more clearly now, fingers curling and uncurling against his leg, a sign that something deeper is waking, something that has been quiet but not gone. And his mother stands in the doorway, her hand resting against the frame, her eyes fixed on him, not with fear, not even with cautious hope, but with something softer, something that feels like belief. And she does not speak, she does not move, she simply watches, allowing the moment to unfold without interruption. And Noah leans forward again, slower, more controlled, his body responding with a rhythm that feels familiar now, and his feet press more firmly against the footplate, the muscles in his legs engaging with a steadiness that was not there before. And Ethan places his hand lightly near Noah's side, not touching, just there, a quiet presence that offers safety without taking control. And Rex steps back just enough, creating space, inviting movement, and Noah follows, his hand reaching forward, not to hold onto the dog this time, but to move through the space he has created. And for a moment, everything aligns, his breath, his posture, the quiet focus in his eyes. And then he pushes, a small, determined effort, his body lifting slightly from the chair, not as uncertain as before, not as brief, but held, just a little longer, just enough to feel it fully. And Rex stays close, his body aligned, ready but not intervening, allowing Noah to carry the moment on his own. And his mother's breath catches, a soft, trembling sound. But she does not step forward, she trusts the space now, she trusts the process. And Noah's knees tremble slightly, the effort visible. But he does not collapse back immediately. He holds it, just for a second more, and then slowly, carefully, he lowers himself back into the chair, controlled, deliberate, and his breathing deepens, not from strain, but from something else, something that feels like recognition. And his hand returns to Rex, not out of need, but out of connection, resting lightly against the fur. And Rex lowers his head again, maintaining that quiet presence. And Ethan steps back slightly, his posture easing, his eyes moving between the boy and the dog, understanding that what has just happened is not a breakthrough in the way people expect, but something more important, something that will last, because it belongs to Noah, not to anyone else. And Noah's eyes lift again, moving across the room, finding his mother, And this time he holds her gaze longer, steady, present, and she smiles, tears in her eyes, but her voice calm as she whispers, "You are doing it, love." And for a moment, just a moment, it feels like he hears her fully, like the connection that began with a dog is now reaching further, expanding. And as the morning light fills the room completely, soft and warm, something settles into place, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet certainty that this is no longer a question of if, but a matter of how far, and how gently, he will continue to return to himself, one breath, one movement, one quiet act of trust at a time. The morning stretches into midday with a quiet kind of persistence, the sunlight now stronger, spilling fully into the room and warming every surface it touches, and the house no longer feels like a place suspended and waiting, but something more alive, more aware, as if it too has begun to trust what is unfolding inside it. And Noah sits forward in his chair, not as he did before, not withdrawn into stillness, but present, his posture held with a subtle strength that did not exist even hours ago. And his hand rests lightly against Rex, not gripping, not searching, but connected in a way that feels chosen rather than needed. And Rex stands close, steady, his body aligned with Noah's, not leading, not pulling, simply there, as he has always been. And Ethan watches from a step away, his arms relaxed at his sides, his eyes moving carefully between the boy's posture, his breathing, the small signals that reveal more than any large movement could. And Noah's mother stands near the window now, the light catching softly in her hair, her hands resting loosely, no longer clenched, her face open, her expression no longer shaped by fear, but by something quieter, something steady. And Noah's fingers move again, a slow, deliberate curl, then a release, testing, confirming, and his wrist lifts slightly, controlled, more certain than before, and for a moment, he holds it there, suspended, and then his arm begins to extend. Not abruptly, not with strain, but with a quiet intention that feels guided from within. And Rex steps forward just enough, creating space, inviting movement without demanding it. And Noah follows, his body leaning forward, his shoulders engaging, his spine aligning more naturally, and his feet press firmly now, more than they have before. And Ethan steps closer, his hand hovering near Noah's side, not touching, just ready. A silent assurance that he is not alone in this effort. And Noah pushes, a small, steady motion. And this time his body lifts higher from the chair, not fully standing, not yet, but more than before, enough to shift his weight clearly off the seat. And the moment stretches, held between effort and balance, and Rex remains steady, his body positioned just in front of Noah, offering a point of focus, a quiet anchor. And Noah's knees tremble slightly, the strain visible, but he does not drop immediately. He holds, just for a second longer, and then slowly, carefully, he lowers again, controlled, deliberate, and his breathing deepens, not from exhaustion, but from something else, something closer to recognition. And Ethan exhales softly, a quiet release, and Noah's mother wipes at her eyes, though her smile remains, small but unwavering. And Noah's hand returns to Rex, resting lightly. But his fingers do not settle completely, they move again, a subtle rhythm, as if the connection itself is now something active, something alive. And Rex lowers his head slightly, meeting the touch, maintaining that constant presence. And Noah's eyes shift, not just between Rex and the floor, but across the room, taking in the space, the light, his mother. And for a moment, his gaze lingers on her, longer than before, steadier, and she meets it with quiet warmth, her voice soft, steady. "I am right here." And Noah's lips part again, and this time the sound that comes is clearer, still fragile, still forming, but undeniably shaped, a faint attempt at something that could become a word. And the room holds that sound as if it carries more weight than anything spoken before. And Ethan remains still, not interrupting, not reacting outwardly, but his eyes soften, a quiet understanding passing through him. And Noah breathes again, deeper, steadier, and his body shifts once more, his shoulders rolling slightly forward, his posture adjusting. And Rex steps again, slow, deliberate, and Noah follows, his hand lifting from the fur, hovering in the air. And for the first time, he does not reach immediately to reconnect, he holds it there, allowing the space to exist, and his arm remains extended, steady. The tremor's still there, but less dominant, and his balance shifts forward, his feet pressing more firmly, and Ethan's hand remains near, not touching, just present, and Noah pushes again, a controlled, intentional movement, and his body lifts once more, higher this time, held longer, his weight clearly off the chair, and for a brief second, he stands in that space, not fully upright, not stable, but undeniably lifted, and Rex stays close, his body aligned, ready but not supporting, allowing Noah to carry the moment, and his mother's breath catches a quiet, trembling sound. But she does not move. She trusts him now. She trusts the process, and Noah holds it, just for a moment, and then slowly, gently, he lowers again, back into the chair, his body settling. But something has changed, something deeper, something that does not leave when the effort ends, and his breathing steadies once more, his hand returning to Rex, not in urgency, but in connection, and his eyes remain open, aware, moving slowly between Rex, Ethan, and his mother, and as the sunlight fills the room completely, warm and steady, something settles into place, not as an ending, not as a final victory, but as a quiet truth, that what has begun here is no longer fragile in the same way. It has found its root, and it will continue to grow, one small, deliberate moment at a time, guided not by force, but by trust, by presence, and by the silent understanding between a boy and a dog who chose to meet him exactly where he was. The afternoon leans gently toward evening, the light no longer sharp, but softened into something warmer, something that lingers as if it too is reluctant to leave what it has witnessed behind. And inside the house, everything feels quieter in a different way, not the silence of absence, but the stillness of something fulfilled, something that has found its place. And Noah sits forward in his chair, not as he once did, not folded into himself, but upright, aware, his body holding a quiet strength that does not demand attention but cannot be ignored, and his hand rests lightly on Rex, not because he needs to, but because he chooses to, the connection no longer a bridge to cross but a place to stand. And Rex remains beside him, calm, steady, his presence unchanged, as if nothing extraordinary has happened at all, as if this has always been the way things were meant to be, and Ethan stands near the window, the late sunlight catching the faint outline of the tattoo on his right forearm, the shape of a dog etched into his skin, and for a moment, he studies it, not with pride, not with regret, but with a quiet understanding that some promises do not end where we think they do, they carry forward, finding new meaning in places we never expected, and Noah's fingers move again, not searching, not testing, but tracing, following the line of Rex's fur with a calm familiarity, and his wrist lifts slightly, steady, controlled, and his arm follows, extending forward, not with hesitation, but with a quiet intention that feels grounded, and Rex steps forward just enough, creating space, inviting movement, and Noah leans, his body responding with a coordination that feels more natural now, his shoulders aligning, his spine straightening, his feet pressing firmly. And Ethan steps closer, his hand hovering near Noah's side, not touching, just there, a silent reassurance that the space is safe, and Noah pushes, a small, deliberate effort, and this time his body lifts again, higher, steadier, his weight clearly off the chair, and the moment holds, longer than before, not perfect, not without tremor, but sustained, and Rex remains close, his presence constant, not supporting, not holding, simply there, and Noah stays with it, his breathing deep, focused, and, for a brief second, something shifts completely, something crosses from effort into being, and then slowly, carefully, he lowers again, controlled, deliberate, his body returning to the chair but not retreating, not losing what it has found, and his hand returns to Rex, resting lightly, and his eyes lift, moving across the room, finding his mother, and this time he holds her gaze fully, not briefly, not uncertainly, but present, and she steps closer, slowly, as if approaching something sacred, her eyes filled with tears that do not fall now, because they no longer carry fear, and she kneels beside him, her voice soft, steady. "You are here." And Noah's lips part, and this time the sound that comes is clearer, shaped, fragile but undeniable. Mom. And the word settles into the room like something that has always belonged there, something that never truly left. And she closes her eyes for a moment, her hand gently finding his, not gripping, not pulling, just holding. And Noah does not pull away. He stays, his hand resting between hers and Rex's fur, connected to both. And Ethan steps back slightly, giving them space, his gaze soft, his posture easing, because he knows that this moment does not belong to him. It belongs to them. And Rex lies down again, his head resting gently against Noah's leg, as if marking the place where everything began. And the house feels different now, not just lighter, not just warmer, but complete in a way that cannot be explained, only felt. And outside, the evening settles quietly, the sky fading into soft hues of blue and gray, the sounds of the neighborhood returning in their usual rhythm. But inside, something has changed that will not return to what it was before. And Noah's hand moves once more, not to test, not to reach, but to rest, steady, certain. And his breathing remains calm, his posture held, his presence undeniable. And Ethan glances once more at the tattoo on his arm before letting his hand fall back to his side, because he understands now that the promise it carries was never just about the past. It was about moments like this, quiet, unspoken, where one life steadies another without asking for anything in return. And Rex remains where he is, no longer guiding, no longer leading, just beside him. And Noah sits there, not fully healed, not finished, but no longer lost. And in the quiet space between them, something remains, something that does not need words, something that will carry forward long after this moment fades. A simple truth that settles gently into everything it touches, that sometimes the smallest act of presence can return a soul to itself, and sometimes that presence comes on 4 quiet paws.